Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. If you're trying to develop your skills as a guitar player or as a jazz musician in general, then you probably thought about how to play solos that are more melodic. And in a way, it's a bit of a paradox that we have a crystal clear idea about when a solo that we're listening to is melodic or not, and at the same time we don't really have much of an idea about how to implement that aspect into our playing and how to work on playing more melodic solos. So in this video I'm going to show you partly what melodic may be and talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to give you two exercises that you can start working with if you want to strengthen that aspect of your playing. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, about improvising over chord changes, or checking out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. As you're probably used to if you watched more of my videos, when I'm exploring something or making a video on a topic, then I really first look at what the thing really is that I'm talking about, and then I try and use that to figure out how to practice it or to insert it into my playing. The first thing to do here is probably to look at what is a melody, and what I did was that I looked up the term melody on Wikipedia, and there you have this definition. A melody is a linear succession of musical tones that the listener perceives as a single entity. There are two things that are really interesting about this definition of a melody. The first one is not that relevant to the video, because that's the one about the listener perceiving something as a melody. But it is important to point out, and it's also something that I come across all over the internet, and especially in the comments to my own videos, because I happen to play jazz music and the melodies can sometimes be a little bit complicated. And that means that some people just perceive them as not musical, just rows of notes with no meaning. And I think most of us, if we're into jazz, we kind of remember the first time we heard a Charlie Parker solo and just thought, well, that's just a bunch of notes and he's playing these random things on top of something that might have been a song once. And then later, when we start to get into it, then we could probably label him as a musical genius. And this is really typical. You have to remember that what is considered melodic is really up to who's playing, what style he's playing in, and who is listening. The other part of the definition is that it's a row of musical notes that we hear as a whole, as one musical statement, where the notes connect or the different phrases connect. And this is something that we can actually work on, because this means that if you want to play a solo that's more melodic, then you need to work on being able to connect the different phrases that you're playing. If we translate this to improvising, then that probably means that we have to use the phrase that we just played to generate or come up with the next phrase that we're going to play. And that's actually something that we can work on and practice when we're trying to improvise over a tune. So there are two really great exercises and two skills that you want to work on when it comes to this, and those are the ones that I want to go over. The first thing we can work on is improvising with motifs. Motifs are really everywhere when it comes to anything that has to do with melody. So that's definitely something you want to check out and you want to insert into your playing. If we take an example of a motif, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony has this opening statement, and then the same statement moved. So that's a motif. Another example of a motif would be Autumn Leaves. And it does actually the same as Beethoven, it just moves it down in the scale. And keeps on going, slightly different scale. So in that way, this is something that's everywhere in anything that has to do with melody. And you'll find it in great solos as well. This is something that's everywhere, and you can just hear it's a musical idea, and then the musical idea is repeated in the next part of the melody, but then changed slightly, because otherwise it gets too boring. So it's not just repeating the same exact melody all the time. You're going to change something either under the melody or in the melody itself to make it interesting. The first thing you want to do if you want to practice using motifs in your playing is probably to take a chord progression or a song that you're extremely familiar with. You don't really want to have a progression where you have to think about what you're playing. You want to have the freedom to just focus on the melodies that you're playing. Now the first step could be to just take that progression, then take a simple melody and try to move that through the changes. So in this video I'm going to use Autumn Leaves to demonstrate this, because that's a tune that a lot of you guys are already familiar with, and it's really easy to demonstrate it on a simple tune like that. So if I start with just out of tempo, this really simple melody on the C minor chord, so the first chord, and then I move that to the F7, I can do that really, this is almost voice leading. It's also just about trying out some things, so you might try different ways of moving from the C minor to the F7, but one possible way is just to change the B flat into an A. Then I can go to the next chord, to the next one, so E flat major 7, A half diminished, D7, and then G minor 6. And of course you want to do this exercise in time as well. And one of the benefits from doing this in time is that we can't do it perfectly. So you're going to have to adapt the motif or change it a little bit to get it to fit with the changes. And really that is also something you want to practice, because you also want to practice to develop your motifs. If you just move the same motif around and you really are strictly just moving the motif, then it becomes predictable and boring to listen to. So one thing is that you want to play the motif, but you also want to develop it and make variations, end it in a different way, or start it in some other place in the bar. There are all these things that you can start working with, and it kind of comes naturally once you start trying to do this in time. And that might sound like this. Another thing that you can work on getting into your playing and into your improvisation is chord response melodies. So most of us probably connect chord response to blues, but really it is also a way of arranging. It's a way of thinking about melody that we can use, and it's also something that you will find in melodies in general. If we take this really famous Mozart piece, then that has a chord part, that's the ascending arpeggio, the G major arpeggio. And then the answer to that is a similar arpeggio idea, but we're using the D7 arpeggio, and it's descending to sort of make it into a conclusion of the first question. And it's really sort of a question and answer idea that he's working with here in the melody. And that's also something that you can try to implement into your solos. Again, this is something that you work on a song or a progression that you know really well, and you probably want to start extremely slow or rubato, just to really give yourself the idea to listen to what kind of ideas you hear, and try to work on coming up with ideas that are related to the thing that you just played. If we take again Awesome Leaves, so if I play the first phrase like for the first 2 bars, and then I want to answer that on the next 2 bars, and then I can maybe do something similar again with the next 2 bars. So that's, in that way, that's almost a motif, but then I make a different conclusion. And that way I'm sort of thinking in 2 layers, so I have a question part and an answer part all the time, and connecting the phrases in that way makes it more of a coherent whole. And of course you can do this in time as well. That will sound like this. The difference between a great solo and an okay solo on a song is very often whether the improviser is able to sort of have a red line really going from the beginning until the end of the solo. And that's something that we're probably overlooking a little bit and not working as much of as we should. But I'm also very curious, what ways do you have to make your solos more melodic? Do you have some things that you're working on that's really helping you play more melodic solos? Then leave a comment on this video. I know that I'm really curious, and I'm pretty sure that everybody else who's watching this video are interested as well. And what I also find is that very often there's a lot of great information being shared in the comments to my videos. So if you're looking for more information, then check out the comments. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and it's the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. The videos that I publish here every week are on finding some solid methods and great strategies for improving and exploring all the great things about jazz guitar and improvising. If you like this video and you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. I'm very grateful for the support that I'm getting from my patrons, and it's because of that I can keep on publishing videos every week. And if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.